Going to call the meeting to order. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the South Brunswick Board of Education, March 11th, and we are live from Crossroads North. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the board secretary has caused notice of this meeting, including date, time, and location, to be posted in the South Brunswick Public Library and the board office, filed with the township clerk, and communicated to the Home News and the Star Ledger. Roll call, Mr. Pulaski, please.
Mr. Raj Krishna? Mr. Ray Keener?
Present.
Mrs. Joyce Mehta? Mr. Mike Mitchell?
Present.
Dr. Stephen Parker?
Here.
Dr. Smith Raj? Mrs. Lisa Rogers?
Present.
Mr. Joseph Scaletti? Mr. Barry Nathanson?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please rise for the salute of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda? Moved by Mrs. Mehta, second by Dr. Parker. All in favor? Any opposed? Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of South Brunswick hereby moves to go into executive session in accordance with Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of Public Laws of 1975 NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21 to discuss school matters. Be it further resolved that the discussion conducted in executive session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the matter has been resolved. Former action may be taken at any meeting. Can I have a motion to go to executive?
Make a motion to go to executive, right?
Moved by Ray Keener. I have a second. Second by Smitha.
Mitchell?
Do I, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, to the public, we're going into executive session, and we should be back around 7 o'clock. See you then. Welcome back, South Brunswick. We're back from executive session. Before I move on, I want to do something, do a moment of silence. We have a former student that passed away last week, and both her siblings still in the school. She was very active in the soccer community in town. So it's Ashley. You know how to pronounce the last name, Mr. Fed? Macaluso? Macaluso. So to her family, I want to wish our condolences on behalf of the district and the board. So can we have a moment of silence, please? Thank you. Moving along, can I get approval of the minutes of February 11th? Can I get a motion, please?
Make a motion.
Moved by Mr. Keener. Do I have a second? Second by Raja. All in favor? Any opposed? Moving along, report of student rep, is Zoya on? She is. Zoya, welcome. Go ahead.
So hello everyone. I hope you all had a great day and are having a good night as usual. And today I will be beginning my report once again with a reminder about subject area honor societies. So those Google Forms are out and they're available on all the grade level Google Classrooms and on the school website. You're encouraged to apply if you meet all the qualifications, and make sure that you turn it in by March 22nd. That's a very strict deadline, so make sure to get in your applications. So now that that's out of the way, I'm going to be talking a bit about what our clubs have been up to. So the Quill Club is planning their annual night of poetry, and the Future Educators Association is attending a virtual conference on March 26th. The conference is going to have guest speakers and breakout topics that include inclusive classrooms, bilingual education, inquiry-based learning, and much, much more. So that's going to be very interesting. The Girls Who Code Club is also having a conference of sorts. They will be having a female alumni panel where they will be discussing computer science, college life, and experiences. They also recently had their IHOP fundraiser, which was a great success. Biking Volunteers has also been quite busy. Students Against Stress, one of the subcommittees, recently raised $570 to make mental health care packages and also to donate them to organizations. A few weeks ago, we also donated $100 to help during the Texas crisis. Hands for Humanity, another one of our subcommittees, is having a Chipotle fundraiser coming up on March 21st, and the proceeds will go towards supporting the hunger crisis in Yemen. Model UN is participating right now, actually, in a national New York Congress, and they are, of course, doing this virtually. So it will be wrapping up on Saturday, and we wish them great luck. I'm sure they're all doing great. Now I'm going to be talking a bit about what student government has been up to. So across the board, student government has really been communicating with administrators and figuring out what we can and can't do and how to really just make the most out of our school experience. So class of 2021 in particular has been meeting quite frequently with school administrators and the activities coordinator to share prom ideas, figure out different ways to do things. And also there will be a survey coming out soon to the senior class. The point of this survey is to really figure out what people are most comfortable with, what they want to see, and really try to just be as inclusive of all seniors and to make the rest of our senior year as great as it can be. Class of 2022 is also kind of doing the same thing. They're brainstorming end of year event ideas. Student Council is hosting a movie night on Friday, March 26th to kick off spring break. We are also celebrating female staff for International Women's History Month. We will be honoring and recognizing all of their accomplishments and all that they've contributed to the school community on our Instagram. So we are very, very excited to just show some love back towards them when they have helped and contributed and supported their students so much. We are also in the midst of planning Mr. SBHS, and next time at the next board meeting, I am excited to be sharing more news about that with you all. So the activities department has been quite busy, and so has the athletics department. Like across the board, our teams in the last season, they did really, really well. And right now I'm gonna share some of their accomplishments. So the boys bowling team finished with a record of 13-2. They were champions of the GMC Pod A. They defeated number 2 state-ranked East Brunswick in the semifinal, and then they went on to beat the number 1 in the state, Woodbridge, to take the title. Christopher Germain bowled an impressive 771 series, which included a high game of 299. Nolan Watlington added a season-high 711 series and a high game of 259 to help lead the Vikings to victory. The girls' bowling team had a similar, extremely successful season. They finished with a record of 11-1. They were champions of the GMC Pod A. They defeated number 3 seed Old Bridge in the semifinal and went to defeat number 1 seed East Brunswick to take the title. The Lady Vikings were led by Abigail Lepore with a 245 game and 636 series, and Caitlin Schwab with a 232 game and a 608 series. So both girls and boys bowling teams had incredibly successful seasons, and congratulations to them. Now I'm going to be talking a bit about the basketball team's accomplishments. The boys basketball team finished its season with a record of 10-4, and they were awarded entrance into the top pod in POD in the GMC. In the final rankings for the GMC Top 10, the Vikings ended the year as the number 4 team in the county. They were led by Tyrell Murchison and CJ Mangrum, who were both selected as first team All-Red Division, and Yathin Vimla, who was selected to the second team All-Red Division. The South Brunswick girls basketball team won the championship of the GMC Reggie Carney Jack Krieger pod with a 53-49 victory over Sayreville on Friday. Katie Roche led with 4 3-pointers and finished with 15 points and 3 assists for South Brunswick, 8-6, which led 28-24 at halftime. Meher Vig totaled 13 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. Zoe Zamir finished with 10 points, 3 steals, and 3 rebounds. Ice hockey also participated in the finals for their pod. POD, I'm not entirely sure, but they all had really incredible seasons, so congratulations to them. Now I'm going to be talking a bit about what our athletics department and what our sports team will be doing in the upcoming weeks. So Winter Guard and dance are preparing for their upcoming virtual performances. South Brunswick home games next week include, and I'm going to now list some of the games that are happening next week. So on March 16th, girls volleyball will be going against JP Stevens. Gymnastics will be going against South Plainfield. On March 17th, wrestling will be going against Old Bridge. On March 18th, girls winter track will be going against East Brunswick. On March 20th, wrestling will be going against JP Stevens, and girls volleyball will be going against Colonia. This is the final reminder that March 15th is the deadline for submission of physicals for Crossroads Spring Sports. Forms will not be accepted after the deadline, so please plan accordingly and make sure to get it in on time. So you have like 4 days left to get them in. And as always, if you ever want to see the full schedule, you can access the athletics schedule. And actually it has all the events on it on our school website. It's under the athletics tab, and the link starts off with Greater Middlesex Conference. And it will take you to this lovely calendar of the whole month, and you will be able to plan accordingly. So that is all the news I have for tonight. As was mentioned earlier, unfortunately, a South Brunswick alumna, Ashley Macaluso, recently passed. If you would like to help the Macaluso family during these difficult times, there is a GoFundMe set up in her memory that you may contribute to. So, yes, yeah. Thank you so much for your time as always, and have a great night.
Thank you, Zora. You have a great night. Also, moving along, reporter superintendent, Mr. Fetter.
All right, welcome everyone. So today is our 1-year anniversary, if it could be called an anniversary. Today was our first day that we actually closed the schools. My understanding is we were the first district to actually do that. It was due to a case that we heard about the night before, actually on March 10th, around between 9 and 10, I can't remember the exact time. Amy Finkelstein, one of our supervisors, called me to let me know that there was information related to a coronavirus potential case. That night wound up being an all-nighter in attempting to get information from the state on what was going on, what information did they have. We did learn at that time that it was a little early in the game, and everything wasn't quite as set up as it might need to have been. I have to thank Jim Ryan for being on the phone with me a lot of time through that night. And it wound up being the next morning, we did get a hold of the Commissioner of Health, Judy Perskelly, who spoke. And at that time, made a decision to close the schools out of precaution. And that started it. What we thought was going to be 2 weeks went on and is still going on. We did send home a little retrospective today, so you can all read that a little bit later. But after a year of this, I think we've reached levels of frustration, and then we've had some very good success stories. I think our kids are our biggest success story, that they continue to endure. They continue to be exceptional. Our families continue to be able to manage and are exceptional. And then you have our staff, who is just everything you could ever hope for. So we've shown our stuff. We'll continue to do so. And on this one-year anniversary, I guess we will remember this is when it started, a year ago today. And as the song says, 525,600 minutes have gone by since we closed school. We're glad to be open now. And I'm going to move right into what's happening next. So our survey closed yesterday, and we do have an increase of students, which is great news. We have a lot more students who are coming back to in-person. What we're doing right now, and I know there might be parents waiting to hear the final news, we are finalizing whether or not we can stay full 5 days a week, or if we have to convert to hybrid schedule or a cohort schedule. We are trying everything to not do that, and we just want to make sure before I make a final announcement as to what we're doing. But I expect to be able to speak to the community tomorrow with an answer as to what is happening for after spring break. About spring break, a little bit about spring break. As you may not realize, April 5th, which is Monday following our spring break week, is going to be off because we did not use all of our snow days. So we only use one snow day, so we still have April 5th. So our spring break is going to be expanded until April 5th. Good news. And then here's the other news about spring break. So for anyone who follows all of the CDC guidelines, the Department of Health guidelines, what I want the public and the board to understand is the schools are in the hands of the New Jersey Department of Health, not the CDC. We have to follow the Department of Health. Now, there is the CDC, there's the New Jersey Department of Health, and then there's the governor's executive orders. I would love to tell you that all three of those things at any given time say the same thing. That is not even close to the case. One specific area that has caused us great grief as of late, and probably many other people grief, is the travel quarantine mandates. Now, when vaccination started, the New Jersey Department of Health made the statement that if you are fully vaccinated means 2 weeks after a second dose of the original 2, you are then considered fully vaccinated. At that point, the New Jersey Department of Health said, if you are fully vaccinated and travel outside of New Jersey, you do not have to quarantine upon your return. Okay. The staff was excited. I was excited to be able to tell people you can leave, you can unchain, and you can get out and not have to quarantine. And certainly we had probably between 50 and 100 people who did exactly what they should have done, rescheduled their spring break cancellation plans from last spring break, finally got out to see family, and then on Monday we find out that the New Jersey Department of Health has changed their mind, and if you leave New Jersey, you now have to quarantine, even if you are fully vaccinated. Now here's where it gets a little dicey. I'm going to use myself for a moment. If I was fully vaccinated, meaning 2 weeks after my second dose, and I picked up a person from Pennsylvania, let's go to Pittsburgh, 5 hours away. I'm allowed to travel to Pittsburgh, so that's okay without having to quarantine, because 5 hours away from Pittsburgh is certainly safer than 3 hours away in Virginia. That was sarcasm. So I go to Pittsburgh, and I pick up a person. I drive back with that person sitting next to me for the entire 5-hour trip. That person was coughing up and coughing and sick the entire trip. I am vaccinated, so according to the New Jersey Department of Health, I do not need to quarantine because I'm vaccinated, regardless of that I was exposed to someone who that next day tested positive for COVID and was symptomatic and sick. Not a problem. I don't have to quarantine. However, if the next day I drive 3 hours to Virginia, stay overnight, see nobody, come back, I have to quarantine for 10 days. That is the current rules of New Jersey. I can't explain how that is possible, but those are the rules. So, why I'm telling you this, not to confuse you or alarm you, but there's a reality. The reality is we are slated to open school on April 6th with about 25% increase in students. Because of this rule, all of our staff members that were following the rules now will have to quarantine for up to 10 days, 7 to 10 days. If that was to happen, and we tried to have school, we would be putting everyone at risk. We could not possibly have school in that environment. So, I'm going to make a few more phone calls tomorrow and see if this is all really true. But at this time, tomorrow, I'll be making a recommendation to the board, if nothing changes, that we will have to go virtual for the week following spring break this year. That would be 4 days. April 6th, April 5th is already off. April 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. What I can't do in good conscience is tell 50 to 100 staff members to cancel your flights, cancel your trips. They did this in earnest of knowing what the rules were. And they cannot be, it's not okay. It's not okay. So the only way to manage this for safety and to be able to have kids come back to school, I can't be out 100 staff members on the first day back with extra, I just can't do that. So to the board, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I don't see any other solution that makes sense. Now here's what else could happen. Maybe the rules will change again. We can't keep going back and forth. We can't keep going back and forth. And the rules have been one of the primary reasons we've been going back and forth for the last year. We can't. So I'm going to look at this tomorrow one last time, make a few phone calls, see if I get information. And if everything is the same, I am going to recommend to the board that we will be closed the week after spring break. If you are vaccinated, there are different rules than if you're not vaccinated on when you can return, associated with negative tests and such with COVID. We'll consult, we'll get all the information we can, and I will make a recommendation at that point. But I can tell you, as of this minute, that is the recommendation I'm leaning towards, that we will have to close for the week following spring break. And for people that are upset, I'm upset. I'm sure everyone will be upset. We're on a good roll right now. I don't want to close. But we have to deal with the fact that the state of New Jersey continues to change its mind. Whether it's logical or not, I'll let someone else decide. I don't know how it's logical that I can't travel 3 hours to Virginia, but I can sit next to someone for 5 hours who has COVID, known COVID, coughing all over me, and that's okay. I don't know how those two things kind of connect. Just so you know, to the board, I drafted a letter on this issue. I sent it to the governor's office, the commissioner of health, commissioner of education, local assemblymen, senators, trying to get someone come up with a rational way to look at things. Hopefully they'll listen, I don't know. Relating further to after spring break, again tomorrow, I will, we'll know enough to decide on cohorting or not. Okay, so that's where we are with that. Let me keep going. Well, I'm going to stop for a second to the board. Does the board have any questions about any of that? Because I don't want to. We're good? Okay. Tonight's a great night, though. We're going to talk about budget, and I'm going to be talking about budget for the first time in about 2 years, where I'm not going to be crying at the end of the presentation. And I don't think you'll be crying at the end of the presentation. So it's good news for budget. We have other good news tonight that'll come up a little bit later in the meeting. I'll leave that one out. We're also honoring our commended students again tonight. Mr. Varela and his team put together another great video. We'll be doing that. Other great news, we have an educator and education support persons of the year. That's going on. Submissions are due by March 18th. Please look for information on that. Reminder to parents, just so you know, regardless of what happens with our closing or not closing, anytime someone travels outside of what's called the immediate area is New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, and Delaware, which is great for me because I can get to all those places to see my children and I don't have to worry about it. Because Connecticut, obviously, That's totally fine. Virginia, very bad place, very bad. So if you take your kid out past not New York, not Connecticut, not Pennsylvania, not Delaware, you go past that, they have to quarantine for 10 days. And you can't, just the way it is. Do I think this will change? I do believe at some point this will change. It did just change in New York. As of April 1st in New York, the travel quarantine is over. Maybe New Jersey will follow. I'm going to see if I can get information on that. If that's the way we're going, I'll know that tomorrow. Well, I won't necessarily, but I'm going to try. See what we can find out. Another good piece, I have good news tonight. Another good piece of news is we've been working hard to get vaccinations for our staff. We've been doing everything possible, and we've had good success early on. We have a lot of our staff have been vaccinated, but we've been trying to get the next grouping vaccinated. While I don't have a confirmed date, I want to give a shout out to Robert Wood Johnson in New Brunswick. They have been stellar for us. We've had many, many people go there already, and everyone tells the same story of a great experience. They currently have taken the names of about 300 of our staff members, and they are trying to identify 2 mornings where they will open it up to just us to get us in. And we'll know in advance of when that is. Now, it has not happened yet, but that's what they're trying to do. If that happens, we'll have first doses in the morning, second doses 21 or 28 days later, and that's great news. That's great news for our staff. So again, Robert Wood Johnson's been awesome. They've been communicative with us, and we're trying. Also, Penn Hospital's been trying, and what we keep hearing from all these hospitals, they're in the same quandary we are. They're just not getting what they believe they were getting as far as vaccine doses to do this, and they're under great restrictions as well. All right, another big topic. Big topic for high school seniors is graduation and prom. Mr. Varela will be communicating about graduation. All I can say at this point is we're waiting for confirmation for what we believe will be a great graduation experience for our kids, far more traditional than what we were able to do last year. We just need to wait for that to come through. And then high school seniors, you'll wait for Mr. Varela and he'll be informing you. Prom is a much more challenging situation. I did learn today that there is discussion. This is how it's explained. There's discussion in Trenton about prom. I don't know where else to go with that. There's discussion. Like, as if it's like, oh, prom. We didn't know that was going to happen. So we're waiting because as of right now, as you know, you can have 150 people at a wedding, and if it's not a wedding or a religious ceremony, it's 25 people. Our prom would only have about 600 people. So we're close. We're right there. What does that mean, 24 proms? How many proms is that, Dr. Parker? 24 proms? 24 proms, yeah. So it was like last year we needed 93 graduations to do the original graduation rule. So we're waiting. The high school is eager to come up with an excellent plan for prom. The rules are crazy, and if other seniors and senior parents are probably hearing, other schools are announcing. What they're announcing is they're announcing what they hope to be. That's all they could be announcing. What they hope to be happening. They might have booked a place, hoping to be it. We're thinking of everything. There will be, if it is possible to have a prom, we will have a prom. But it has to be possible to have a prom. The high school wants to do this. I know the kids want to do this. But you heard Zoya talk about asking the kids. I mean, there's still people that won't go to a prom right now. We're interested in how you could do a prom with dancing and with food with the rules. Right now, it doesn't quite mesh. But we're hoping that the governor or the Department of Education provide us guidance on prom soon. Very soon. We need that information. So that's where we are on those big events at this time. And otherwise, things are going, I just got to hand it to our families, our teachers and our kids. They're amazing that they're all managing. And let's give everybody kudos. It's wonderful. Our administrative team, every day is a challenge. Staffing is still a big challenge, not because our staff are doing anything wrong. It's just, if someone has a symptom, they need to be home. It's just the way it goes. It's very, very difficult to operate a school right now. But we're doing it, and credit goes to all of those people, our administrators and staff, who just make it happen every day. So thank you to all of them, and To our board, thanks for all your support and letting us get to where we need to get to every day. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Lincoln.
Thank you, Mr. Fetter. Ms. Jen, do you want to introduce Peter, or?
Yeah, and I just want to say that this is our third night that we're doing this recognition. It would be a night that we'd have an auditorium filled with kids and their parents. And I really just want to say a shout out to our Merit Scholars. We're celebrating our second half of those students tonight. So they're at home watching right now. So we thank them for all their hard work and their parents for supporting them. We have a video tonight. But Barry, I have to tell you, the thing that I miss the most is that when you get to tell them they all get to go home and they can go home and do their homework. I think you might have to do that at the end of the video for us.
There you go, I'll do
Okay?
that. I like that.
But we'll show it, Peter's gonna introduce it, and take a look at the screen, everybody.
Following up from our February 25th board meeting, tonight is our third opportunity to honor students virtually for their stellar performance on the PSAT, which is also the qualifying test for the National Merit Scholarship Program. Being recognized by the National Merit Organization is truly one of the most prestigious honors for high school students every year. Now, to refresh our collective memories, I'd like to provide you with a little background about these honors. Every year, the National Merit Scholarship Corporation recognizes the 50,000 members of each graduating class with the highest scores on the PSAT as either semifinalists or commended students. We have 60 commended students to honor this year, and tonight we will recognize 29 of them. Keeping with our practice, we invited our students to honor an educator who has made a significant impact on their lives. Each student was asked to write a short letter thanking a faculty member. Each teacher will receive it at a later date as a framed letter. In addition, all honorees will receive a certificate of accomplishment from President Barry Nathanson and the Board of Education. Before I start our presentation, I would like to thank Mr. Norman Chow for selecting a piece of artwork that Bridget Swearingen, a junior at SBHS, created for us. I would also like to thank Ms. Ramona Baker and Ms. Marion Murphy for their assistance tonight, as well as recognize and thank Ms. Lisa Manganello for editing and creating this amazing video. As we start our program, I thought I'd share some of the colleges and universities that our commended students applied to for admission. Our first spotlight tonight is on Niketh Lakshmanan. Niketh will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, he is honoring Mr. Raymond Bruce Bohm, a teacher at Crossroads South. Our next spotlight is on Hamzi Mali Sivakumar. Hamzi will be majoring in neuroscience next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Ms. Nicole Hunter, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Ashvi Manakwala. Ashvi will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Ms. Karina Alonso, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Shreya Manjrekar. Shreya will be majoring in biomedical engineering next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Mr. Javier Blanco, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Ian McGregor. Ian will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Mr. Mark Cilio, a teacher at Crossroads North. Our next spotlight is on Ayush Medirata. Ayush will be majoring in mathematics next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Mr. Sean Renalis, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Arnav Mehta. Arnav will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Mr. Chris Haver, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Arnav Nayak. Arnav will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Ms. Lindsay O'Mara, a teacher at Crossroads South. Our next spotlight is on Ria Patel. Ria will be majoring in business and finance next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Ms. Lisa King, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Rushi Patel. Rushi will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Mr. Kenneth Sadowski, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Siddhi Patel. Siddhi will be majoring in physics next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Ms. Joylene Mayerta, a retired teacher from Crossroads North. Our next spotlight is on Jason Piapilli. Jason will be majoring in aerospace engineering next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Mr. Matthew Kostabny, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Vaishnavi Payeti. Vaishnavi will be majoring in biomedical engineering next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Mr. Matthew Becker, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Yamin Fan. Yamin will be majoring in biochemistry next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Mr. Timothy Burnett, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Vidur Poem. Vidur will be majoring in neuroscience next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Mr. Wilfredo Rivera, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Melvin Rajendran. Melvin will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Ms. Beth McGinley, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Leica Rakundlia. Leica will be majoring in biomedical engineering next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Ms. Kathleen Feckerty, a retired teacher from the high school. Our next spotlight is on Vijay Ramakrishnan. Vijay will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Dr. Masood Chakra, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Rishi Raman. Rishi will be majoring in biomedical engineering next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Ms. Bess Lee, a teacher at Crossroads South. Our next spotlight is on Ronak Sani. Ronak will be majoring in applied economics next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Ms. Sandra Olson, a teacher at Crossroads North. Our next spotlight is on Aruna Sankaran. Aruna will be majoring in biology next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Mr. Mark Lalamia, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Abiram Tamvada. Abiram will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Ms. Kimberly Greenberg, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Amrita Tejawani. Amrita will be majoring in public health next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Ms. Annette Galero, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Nisha Tirumalai. Nisha will be majoring in finance and marketing next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Mr. Eric Trost, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Neha Tirumalai. Neha will be majoring in data science next year. Tonight, she would like to honor Mr. Peter Kuzma, a counselor at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Dennis Tsarkov. Dennis will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Mr. Stephen Schiff, a teacher at the high school. Our next spotlight is on Chandler Wang. Chandler will be majoring in computer science next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Mr. Paul Martirano, a retired teacher from the high school. Our next spotlight is on Yoel Jacob. Yoel will be majoring in finance and economics next year. Tonight, he would like to honor Ms. Nancy Moorer, a teacher at Crossroads South. Our next and final spotlight tonight is on Sai Swaraj Yolaka. Sai Swaraj will be enlisting in the United States Navy. Tonight, he would like to honor Ms. Caitlin Ordog, a teacher at the high school.
To conclude my virtual presentation, I would like to now share with you a few quotations directly from the letters that were written to our staff members, though I wish I could share and read every single letter to you. Your class allowed me to grow in more ways than one, and for that, I am truly grateful. Your classroom atmosphere was incredibly welcoming, and your personality lit up the room. I am so grateful for the kindness and guidance you have shown me for the last 4 years. Your class has been truly remarkable and will stick out as some of the best learning moments that I've had throughout my high school career. Your contagious optimism has inspired me to focus on the positive aspects of my life. You taught me to not only love history, but to also love learning. Faculty, our students are proud to call you their teachers and know that you make a difference each and every day. Another group that makes a difference each and every day is our parent group. I would like to honor our students' parents tonight for their hard work and support. And finally, we have a truly talented group of students being recognized virtually tonight. It's important to note that our honorees aren't just high achievers when it comes to the PSAT. They are effective leaders, talented musicians, accomplished athletes, and much, much more. Again, congratulations, commended students, honored teachers, and their parents. This concludes tonight's presentation. Please join me in a virtual round of applause for them.
I want to thank the parents and students that are online. The parents never get enough thanks, but I want to thank them and again thank the students for achieving this. It's amazing, and congratulations. And like Ms. Desler said, you're welcome to leave the Zoom to go finish your homework and get a good night's sleep. Moving along, going back to Scott and also David Pulowski for the 21-22 tentative budget.
Okay, hi everybody. This is Scott talking, if you can't see who's talking. I'm going to go through but this is what's called the preliminary budget. So this is not being adopted tonight. This is so you can hear where we are as far as right now. Between now and the beginning of May, there might be changes. Any changes, of course, the board and the public would know about. In May, there is what's called a budget hearing. At that time, the public has an opportunity to speak on the budget. Of course, tonight, public comment, someone can make a comment, but there's an actual format for public at a public hearing, which will be in May. And at that point, you'll be asked to vote on the budget. What happens tonight? Present this to you. If it all looks good, David goes to his computer and he uploads the preliminary budget for the county. And there's a process that's used. The end of the day, one thing you need to know about the budget is it needs to balance. There's a certain amount of money coming in, there's a certain amount of money you spend. That has to be balanced. The budget has to always show that balance. So I want to talk about some of the important financials, and David will chime in and jump in when I don't really know what I'm talking about, because he's really the budget guy. And the big one that we hear about mostly is called state aid. And what state aid is, the state has determined how much it will give every town to help run its schools. This is the whole conversation that's been going on for 2 years about S2 that has been very, very problematic for South Brunswick. The good news is it's not problematic as we thought it was going to be, and that's great news for us, and I'll explain that as we go. Other important financials that people need to understand that are happening right now are because of the various stimulus packages that are happening in the federal government, locals, states, and then local towns are getting money. The money, called money from the CARES Act, is designated for certain use. It is not money that comes into the budget and stays in the budget years out. It's more like a grant. Right now, we've been given about 1.6 million, and we'll be looking at possibly, we're not 100% sure yet, but possibly more money from the stimulus package that was just passed by the House in Washington. That could be another $2+ million. Those dollars, if we get them all, as they said, have to be used over a 2-year period, but we do not have, at this point, any information on what they're allowed to be used for. So they are not part of the budget, but they will go a long way in helping us kind of make up for any lost ground due to the pandemic. When you talk about that, you talk about the kinds of things that are in the pandemic, the impact of the pandemic to students, to the schools. You look at staffing, what might we need to do there? We have what kind of materials might we need to do as far as helping kids catch back up if there are any deficits or losses. We have unknowns. As of right now, to give you an example of an unknown, Will there be an opportunity for parents to choose virtual learning next year? I don't know the answer to that. No one knows the answer to that. Right now, that is directly tied to an executive order and a state of emergency. If the state of emergency is gone and there's no change to the executive orders, that option would also be gone. However, not knowing that puts us in a bit of a problem to plan without knowing the information that you need to plan. That's hard. So that's a problem for us, but there'll be money available once we do learn all the things we need to learn. And of course, the big one is the impact on learning, impact on SEL, social emotional, and all of those things. That's where that CARES Act money will be mandated to go in some fashion. We don't know how yet. Another important financial part is the state comes up with various insurance programs and opportunities at various times. Currently, the one that came into play this January was something called Chapter 44. It was a new insurance plan that allowed staff to choose to go to a different insurance plan, which was lesser insurance, but also a much lesser price. So as a result of that, it does have an impact on the finances of a school district. It has an impact in the way in how much the school district pays for the insurance plan, as well as how much contribution is provided by an employee to the district for the insurance plan. So we've had an impact. That's impacted us by about $450,000 as a loss to the district. You can consider a loss to the district, but there are staff members who now are paying less money for insurance. That's positive for the staff members. It's just an impact of financials. It's just a reality of our situation. The other ones are this year looking at revenues. As you know, things like the Summer Institute, we are projecting to have less students because it could be virtual again. We don't know, but we're going to project a revenue loss. Community education is going to be a flat, not a revenue maker this year. Facility rentals, well, we haven't rented the facility in a year, and that's usually about how much money, Dave?
150,000.
So about 150 grand we make a year. As of right now, we can't predict anything. We can't predict anything at this point. Food service projection, we have a guaranteed in our contract when things are normal of 200 or 300,000 a year?
200.
$200,000 a year. This year, they're just breaking even. And you can't, they're doing a phenomenal job for the community, but it doesn't mean there's any money being made. It's all break even right now. So those are big, important things, right? I mean, you're losing revenues that come in to pay things for school. We've lost revenues, so that has an impact on our budget. I'm not getting into the whole deficit model budgeting right now. I'm going to downplay a little bit this year because we're not looking at the $2.2 million loss we were supposed to lose, which I'll get through in a few slides. The state of New Jersey, in their process of determining state aid, how much money they give each district, it's a very complex, complicated formula. David, however, I will tell you, is becoming kind of a master of it. And he's becoming a master because we're trying to determine what actually happened. We have a schedule that says we are going to lose $9 million in hard cash over a 6-year period. Last year, it said we were going to lose $1.7 million. They took $1.936 million. This year, it said we're going to lose $2.2 million. We're only losing $257,000. Now, mind you, we're losing $257,000. Neighboring districts got over $8 million. Neighboring districts, I won't mention North Brunswick by name, but neighboring districts, sorry, Ray, got over $8 million. I won't mention Woodbridge that got $18 million. We lost $257,000. Now again, it's a complicated formula. Those other districts might very well needed that money, so it's not a knock against them. It's just the reality of the situation. I didn't mention Newark's $95 million, so don't worry about that. But anyway, the reality is we have $257,000 less money to play with. We have less revenues coming in. We have to deal with all that. Again, I give this man compliments all the time on this topic, David, not all compliments, but on this. He does a fantastic job in making sure our kids and our families don't even see all this. I tell you about it, but you're not feeling it. I know that because we still make sure all of our programs run. We make sure we're managing our class size to the best of our ability, and we're doing those things. But it's not easy every year, because every year we are in a deficit model, which means you need more money every year and you get less. It's pretty simple. So that's the way we always look at it. There's just no other way to look at it. I will tell you, there's some bills out there that are very, very, very scary. Bill meaning the legislature in New Jersey is looking at a few bills right now that could be extremely cost impactful. I'm not judging whether or not they're good for kids or bad for kids, but these bills could cost us over $1 million if they pass. If that happens, we won't know about that until after we've already budgeted. That's a problem. One of the bills is out there to allow kids who what's called age out. So a child until the age of 21 is the responsibility of the school district to educate. There's a bill that says 21-year-old students who turn 22 can still stay in the schools. That could alone have an impact of $700,000 to $900,000 for the district. Again, not saying it's bad for kids, just saying there's an impact financially. It's a budget conversation. Another bill that's out there, if that one passes, I don't even know how to calculate the budgetary impact, and that would be that every parent has the right to retain their kids for another year of education, period. Might be a good idea educationally, I don't know. I'm not gonna challenge the merit of that yet, but financially, when you're budgeting, it's massive. How do you budget when all of a sudden, think of it this way, all your kids could just stay? That won't happen, but it could happen. And what do you do in kindergarten if the parents in kindergarten say, you know what? This wasn't the best year, right? I'm going to keep my kid back in kindergarten again. And then all the new kindergartners, where do they go? What happens? I got to double my kindergarten. Where am I doing that? Where's my space? Where's my staff? How do I do this? Going to take all my first grade teachers that don't have any kids anymore, put them in kindergarten. Anyway, those are out there. We don't know when they're going to pass, if they'll pass, we don't know anything. And it's March, and we have a budget due. That's part of the problem here, is timing is a major problem, information is a major problem, and unknowns are a major problem. I talked about the healthcare waiver. We used to be able to have a healthcare waiver, about $1 million, that's gone, so can't use that anymore. We have no more bank cap, we have nothing left because last year was a hard year. There's no legal way to go above the 2% cap unless the Board of Education wants to ask the community to go for a vote and vote to spend more money of their taxes. I see the board was very excited about that opportunity, yes? Very excited, yes. You can't see their faces, but they're very excited about this. So then there's good news. So I gave you the bad news, now I'll give you some good news. One of the ways in which you're taxed is based upon something called rateables. Rateables are just basically how much money is being collected. I can't even get into the specifics of it. I don't even fully understand it, but here's the issue. When rateables go up, that means your taxes are getting spread. You don't need to collect as many from a residential home because other money is coming into the town. This is good news. David, how much are the rateables going up in South Brunswick for next year?
They didn't, they went down.
They went down? How much?
Past 2 years, they decreased by $700 million.
700 million. Was that good?
That was a good thing.
It's a good thing. So 700 million, meaning when we raise taxes, if we have to in the school, you still get a decrease in your property tax. Yes?
Yep, absolutely.
Good news. That's pretty much where we are. The budgets always have to align to revenues. I explained that to you, and that's kind of how this works. David, you want to handle this slide, please?
Sure.
David, what is it? The 700 million is the assessed value, the rateables went up, right?
No, the
The assessed value went down.
right, the value, the rateables in the assessed value went down.
Right, but the rateables went up.
No, the rateables decreased.
The rateables decreased?
Yeah, the rateables decreased for the past 2 years,
Okay.
which got us a little bit closer with regards to our adequacy spending and our local fair share,
Okay.
which is why we saw a little bit less, well, saw a lot less of a decrease this year in our budget.
But for the average taxpayer, we'll show you what that means. It generally means you have a decrease in your taxes, even though the school tax will raise, your property tax will decrease.
Correct. As it has the past 3 years.
Ms. Mehta?
So basically, but the rateables, that's fine, it decreases the property taxes, but in this case, it's directly related to how much funding, right?
there's a direct correlation to the valuation of the town to how much state aid. In this particular case, all of the numbers worked well this year, worked horribly last year, worked awesome this year. So not only did we not lose the state aid, the taxes in the town went down. So huge, as I said, we're not crying today. No crying. This is good news.
No tears. So this year, we're proposing a 2% tax increase on the tax levy for the community, which will raise your tax levy just a little over, what is that, $2 million. You have a tuition collected. This is tuition that we collect from our employees for their children to attend our schools. Last year, this number came in at about $202,000. This year, we're budgeting a little bit more, although that's kind of phased out. It's been a number that's been in our budget for a long time. Our miscellaneous revenue is really where all of our community ed, our facilities rentals, all of the things that we do within the district to just raise dollars to offset our expenses. We really took a conservative approach at this number and decreased it pretty much by half. State aid, we see a little bit of a decrease. We got decreased $257,000. Our extraordinary aid, every year we bring in about $1 million with extraordinary aid. We're going to start that process again this year. That number has stayed pretty steady throughout the course of the past 3 years, but did increase quite a bit after we sat down and went through that grant and made sure that everything was being accounted for. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this year in a COVID environment with regards to the special services and the special education services that we provide our students, knowing that they weren't here. It's going to be interesting to see what we're allowed to deduct and what we're allowed to claim. Medicaid reimbursement is a number that we get from the state. The $83,000 is what we're told to budget every year from the state, but what we actually collect is more like $79,683. That's what we collected last year. Again, the state's going to require us to budget the $83,000, but we know that that number 79,000 is really what we actually collect. Our fund balance is pretty much what's in your checkbook at the end of the year. Every year, the fund balance, if it increases, then we have to come to the table with that money the next year to make sure that we have the funding to just keep things moving. Our fund balance this year took about a $44,000 decrease. We used funds over the course of last year to offset some expenses. So you'll see a little bit of a decrease in the fund balance. Nothing that's going to dramatically change the way we do business. Our general fund overall at about a $2 million increase. And moving forward with federal revenues, this is a line that's really, people are going to look at it and go, wow, we collected a lot of money last year with regards to federal revenues. It's safe. What you have to understand about this line is that we budget 85% of what we collect with federal revenues only because we're not positive that those funds, or those title grants, are going to fully be funded the next year. So the tricky numbers that are in this line includes about $800,000 of CARES Act, Digital Divide, Corona Relief Fund, all of those grants that we received this year, the state actually put them in this federal revenues line and included them in our budget. So that number really increased our revenue side in the current year.
So David, if we get both of the stimuluses, the two new stimuluses, they have us estimating around $4 million for both. That would really make it, not that we could put it in today's budget, but that would make the federal revenues line for 21-22 be closer to $7 million.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's where they will actually budget those funds. We see them, we manage them, they come into our revenues, but when the state comes out and says, hey, you got this money, that's the lines they get.
And just so the board understands, that isn't money you can put into a permanent salary. If that goes into a permanent salary, when that money from the feds run out, you're stuck. So you have to remember the extra money they give us has to be treated like a grant. So some of that federal money is perennial money every year, but the new money, anything related to COVID or the stimulus, is all money that we have to treat like a grant.
A good way of looking at that is to put the word project on the end of anything that you actually do. So it's an instructional project. It's a curricular project. It's an infrastructure project. It's a building project, which means that that project at one time or another may end or will end, have to end. Our debt service, every year you see a little bit of decrease in your debt service. We pay off our bills. These are for referendums that are outstanding with the district. We budget the 7.3 million, but know that the state actually provides us some debt service relief, and you'll see that in a later slide. So our total revenue all in, $154,643,235. That's a lot of millions, and our expenses will equate to that exactly at the end of this year. In a governmental budget, we cannot budget more than what we have, and we cannot spend more than what our revenues.
Dr. Parker?
Yes, so based on these numbers, we're asking for 2.3 million more from the tax levy, but we're spending $220,000 less than we spent last year.
Correct.
Yeah.
You got it. We'll show a little bit more on a previous slide.
So this is that old S2 conversation, the state aid. If you can see, we became an S2 district going into the 1920 year. When S2 first came out, it was a year going into the 1920, came out going into the 1819 year. According to the S2 funding formula, we got over $1 million. We were like, okay, this is working. The next year, the valuation of the town went up 1.3 billion, and that knocked us into this S2 world. So as you can see, the next year, we lost kind of what they took. What they gave us in 1718 into 1819, they took into 1920. Then this year, 1920 into the current school year, you'll see the $1.9 million reduction. This 21-22 only shows a $257,000 reduction. That was supposed to be a $2.2 million reduction. Here is the most important part of the presentation. We don't know what 22-23 is now going to be. The numbers 22 and 23, the last two rows on this sheet, that is what they gave us. That is what the state of New Jersey told South Brunswick taxpayers they were going to be taking or giving to South Brunswick. I don't know if that's still true, but here's the problem. What if it is true and next year they take $4 million? Massive problem for us. Now, that's why David is becoming expert at state aid and the intricacies of a funding formula that probably has very little logic to it. That's why it's hard to understand. David's a smart guy, but it's hard to understand an illogical formula. Bottom line is the formula changes and adjusts year in, year out. So we talked to other S2 districts like us. All the people we talked to all lost the money they were scheduled to lose, not us. It's because of this valuation, these ratables, and how close what the state says we should be collecting is to how much we're actually collecting. As that number gets closer and tighter, we stop becoming S2.
And if I could add to that just real quick, the number that the state says we should be paying in the local fair share in terms of what we're actually paying in terms of the community, for the past 4 years, your valuables, your ratables went so high that we were able to go out for multiple years over 2%. When the 1 year we took the healthcare waiver, we took bank cap, and we took 2%. That was about a 2.8% increase on your tax levy. What's happened over the year, what's happened this year was your ratables dropped a little. They increased the variables that they multiplied the ratables by, your assessed valuation, your district income, and your assessed valuation. And when they looked at that number, they compared it to what your local fair share is now. And because of over the past 3 years, those increases to your local fair share, all of those equations brought those two numbers closer together. And because those numbers were closer together, it changed all of the dramatics of 2 million to 257,000.
So we're going to take it. We're going to be watching closely. We work with the township to understand their numbers and how this might impact us. And we're hopeful that we're out of this mess. That would be awesome for the town. And we'll keep everybody posted. And we might know more by the time we adopt a full budget. But as of right now, this is our state aid, and we're sadly happy with a minus 257. It's not a plus millions, but it's not minus 2.2 million. So we're happy, sadly.
Sadly happy. So this is a comparison or a composition of the 21-22 revenues. This just shows everybody a little bit of where the revenues actually come from. So currently, right now, 15% of our revenue base comes from state aid. The majority, 80% of your local, 80% of your revenue that we use to operate the district comes from the local tax levy. A couple other small pieces in there. You've got your other local sources, miscellaneous revenues, our fund balance, and our extraordinary aid. But this is an interesting slide in the sense that 15% of the revenues used to operate our district come from the state aid, and the state's actually telling us, in this other world, what other world they're working from now, that we're actually not paying enough.
Not where we mean
the local fair share.
South Brunswick is not paying enough.
South Brunswick's not paying enough with their local fair share, which in turn, when this all ends up, and if we do end up with those state aid numbers, you're going to be looking more like a 13% of state aid and an 82 to 83% number with your local tax levy.
So we're hoping it doesn't happen, but we're just letting you know where we still stand with that. So this is what it looked like. This is the document. This is not, David didn't make this. This came from the state. That's all this is. And you can see we were scheduled to lose 8.847 million over the course of this 6-year period. Last year, they didn't take away that. They actually took away that. That made that number 9 million, a little bit over. Now,
we don't know what.
So that's where we are. This is what we're dealing with. When I talk about unknowns, just imagine running a business with this information. This is what we are trying to do. We're lucky this year. We could be lucky again next year, or we could be in a real trouble if they take $4 million away next year. What we don't want to happen is they go, oops, sorry, made a mistake. We meant to take the 2.2 million. You still owe us the 1.9, plus you owe us the 2 million schedule. Thanks for playing. We hope that's not the case, but we just want to keep you posted. Nothing we told you in the years past was made up. That was all from the state. We'll be happy to be wrong again next year. Very happy. So, and this is just another example of what it looks like. Your tax levy, as Dr. Parker pointed out, we're going up 2%. That is the max by law we're allowed to go without going to a vote. Obviously, I was kidding before. No one wants to go to a vote. That's a $2.3 million increase in what's being collected in the community. But because, so yes, we're getting 2.3 million more, but because of the ratables and the spread of the money, no one is going to see an increase to their taxes as a result. So we had the room to do that. Thank goodness, because we need to do that to operate the school district and keep it the school district it is. You'll see our state aid's going down by that 257, balancing the extraordinary aid. Fund balance is basically balanced, minus a little bit. David talked about the others. At the end of the day, we're $1.3 million difference, and that's all that's going up, as Dr. Parker talked about. So that's where we are. We're raising the 2.3, but we're only going up 1.3. At the end of the day, this is the part you care about.
You want to go back one slide, because we had a very, very important statement at the last end of that slide. Just so everybody's aware, a 3% increase in salaries on all employees and a 3% increase in health care equates to about $3.3 million new dollars each year. So every year when we look at salaries and when we talk about health care, if those increases are just at 3%, we need to bring in $3.3 million just to cover those increases. That's not including more expensive gas. That's not including insurance. That's not including instructional change. That's not including special education tuition in.
So David,
in
this is the deficit model.
This is the deficit model.
You need 3.3 million to keep your doors open to do the same thing you did the year before, but we only have 1.3 million new dollars.
You got it.
That's the way this plays out. Again, we do magical things to make this happen every year, but that's the problem you face. But here's the major impact. Somehow in this town, an average home is still assessed at $200,000. I can't imagine how far off that is from true. Half? Maybe half. Maybe worse than half. But it doesn't matter. That's the way it is. So if you own a house that is currently assessed, not worth, assessed at $200,000, your tax impact next year, if we adopt this budget in May, is a minus $204. Now look what happens if your house is assessed at $300,000, you lose $306. So you can see every 100,000.
You gain it.
You gain. You're gaining. You're keeping it. You're keeping it. Sorry, folks. You can see what happens. The more your house is assessed, the more money you're going to save. Comes out to about $102 per 100,000. This is, again, because of the ratables, because of valuations, because of all those complex things. At the end of the day, the taxes are being collected. We're getting $2.3 million more from the community, and from everywhere in the community, residential, commercial, everything. But it's costing everybody less because there's more money. When you add everything up, there's more of it. It's spread out. That's what happens. It's a weird dynamic, but that's how it works.
This is an interesting slide. This is your Middlesex County Board of Taxation. I can tell you, being here going on year 4, and this is the 4th budget we've put in front of the community. South Brunswick has never moved off of the bottom 4 rows. And you might think that you want to be number 1 on this table, but you really don't. You want to be number 22, 23, 21. It's better to be at the lower end of this table. It shows that the township, the district, everybody's really working hard to keep taxes low. The Department of Education uses this number and compares it to the state average tax and uses some of this to make computations to determine some state cuts or state aid. Right now, being under $2.27 means that you're not even in the ballpark to use this calculation to determine your state aid. So this is a good place to be. You've been there for a lot of years, and it just shows the fiscal responsibility of the township and the school district moving forward and keeping taxes low for the community.
Yep. So what we do, this is how we operate, this is what we do. This year, we have to assess this whole pandemic. We have to see what it's about. We have to look at what money we get from CARES. We have to look at what our academic needs are, what our SEL needs are, what our operations needs are. So that's not something we've ever had to do before, but we're going to do it this year. And that's going to be a big part of our budget when we come to where all the money goes. So we know how much money we have. Now it's a question of where it all goes, and that's budgeting. We always review program efficiencies, making sure everything we're doing is doing it effectively and the most cost effectively. Enrollment's a big piece. We use a modern version of a cohort survival analysis. Basically, we just look and see our expected enrollment grade by grade to see if there's any movement in staffing. That's where you see like a bubble could go through a district. I'm going to tell you, this next year is the first year since I've been here that the high school is going to see a small dip in their enrollment. Not a big dip. You're graduating about 750, 760 kids, and the 8th grade is only about 650, 660 kids. So your 8th grade goes into 9th grade.
Yep.
Your 12th graders leave, drops about 100, 110 kids. That's the first drop since I've been here. In 4 years, if enrollment stays static, meaning all the kids continue to move through the system without any major increases or decreases, the high school numbers will be closer to 2,700 instead of 3,000. That's currently where we're going with that. Next thing we do is any grant opportunities. Jen Disler, Suzanne Luckborn, Rafael Morales, and anyone else who might be able to identify grants, manage all the grants we have. and those get put into either one-time spending if they're a smaller grant or a one-time grant, or perennial grants from the titles and from the federal government. David, talk
Yeah, it's
about
our
vendor
office.
relationships.
Our office and the business office has constantly and consistently over the past 4 years reviewed our vendor relationships. We look at whether or not it's appropriate to hire new staff or to source out services. We're constantly negotiating with transportation companies. Whoa, what happened there? And making sure that we're able to ensure that the district's getting the best bang for its buck with regards to dollars that it's spending. And never fail, I didn't see that one coming.
Would you kick the wire?
No.
No, I think the battery died.
Oh.
But that was the end of our presentation, so that was really a good spot to end.
That actually was. The next slide is a question mark.
Yeah.
Board members, if you want to come back, so if you have questions, you can go on the mic,
Look at that, everything's shut down.
please.
Perfect timing.
So, Mr. Federer and Mr. Pulaski, I'd like to open, now that you finished abruptly, open up to questions from the board. Anybody have?
Dr. Parker.
Oh, Dr. Parker.
This is kind of more of a comment, but this complex formula that we've been talking about here that determines state aid, three significant pieces to that is the township's value, the valuation, our tax levy, how much we're getting from them, and sort of a fudge factor in there. Now, what is it, 4 years ago or whenever this? So when S2 came out, the township took a huge jump in valuation. We've been cutting our pennies and not getting more taxes to people, and their fudge factor went up. And that caused us to look really bad in the state's mind and to give us all these cuts. Since then, the valuations come down, not a lot, but at least a little bit. We've continued to ask more from the community, 2% each year or more. Plus, they changed their fudge factors. And so we're not as bad, and we didn't get quite as big a cut. The problem is, of those three things, township valuation, what we get for the tax levy, and the fudge factor, we're only in control of one of those. And that's part of the problem. We can only control one of those. The other two are completely unknown to us.
Yep.
The township controls valuation, the state controls the fudge factor. And that's what makes it very hard for us to predict what state aid's going to be, even though you got the equation in front of you, because they changed those fudge factors and things, so.
It's difficult, I would agree, it's difficult to base a budget on numbers where the variables in the formula are constantly changing. So one of the things I did this year, just because I was so enamored by the idea of getting not cut 2 million, but 250,000, was I looked back at our state aid here in South Brunswick to 2013. And what they have done, the state has constantly changed the variables in that formula every single year. It's never the same. Depending on any given time, it could be more or it could be less. This year it was decreased. Both those variables on district income and valuation were decreased, and that caused us to be okay. What's going to happen next year? I'm not sure. We don't know. I'm running some models with some pretty conservative assumptions, but I'm not at liberty to share them because who knows? I'm not going to be the guy that goes on record with this equation, knowing what it's been for the past 10 years. Also, it's good to note that the other impact on a lot of this is the enrollment, the number of students you have in the district. And looking back at enrollment over the course of years, in 2011, you had 9,200 kids here. Just over 9,000 kids in 2011. we're just now over 8,000 kids. 8,200. That's a major decrease in enrollment. And when they look at that, they say, you know, for the number of kids you're educating, multiplied by your cost per pupil, that's some of the first numbers that are involved. So there is a piece of that equation that's in there as well.
Lisa?
Just to add to that comment, I have a comment, plus I have a question. You know, you had mentioned 2013, but this has been going on since 2010. We've been losing almost 10 million a year in this district. It started back in 2010. So when you consider the fact that our taxes, or not our taxes, excuse me, the loss of various aids, we used to have like 75% of our schools were paid by taxes, and now it's at 80%. And the district and the parents are unfortunately over years, and the students have gotten hit because we've had the loss of the AB sports at the middle school level. We've had to get rid of the second group of sports kids that could not participate because we couldn't afford it. We had to institute pay to play. We've had to do a lot in the district. And, you know, you have to commend the parents and the students on this, because not only are the taxpayers supporting it, but it was a huge change and shift in thinking over the last several years of how we were going to manage this. And my concern is, though we're not in that situation now this year, we may be in that situation again next year. And I think people have to start recognizing that, you know, they may have to be tapped on the shoulder to help out in terms of convincing Trenton that we cannot continue to have these cuts and the impact to our students and our taxpayers when these hits come along, especially if enrollment is going down, to your point, David. We'll see that hit. One of the questions that I had is, we just heard recently that Senator Sweeney is looking to push his program of, I don't want to say redistricting at state level, but regionalization, thank you, I couldn't think of the word. He's looking to regionalize some of the districts to reduce the 600 plus districts down to, I think, 300, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. And I know that in Middlesex County, Cranberry, Jamesburg, and Milltown are tapped to be regionalized. Can you just address that, Scott, if we're going to be part of that or not? Thank you.
When it comes to the three towns you mentioned, all three are connected to other districts. Cranberry sends kids to Princeton. Jamesburg sends kids to Monroe. Milltown might be East Brunswick?
Yeah.
Right? So there's a logical sequence of where you would look. If you're Cranberry, while we are a closer partner than Princeton, so is West Windsor, so is Monroe for Cranberry. I would not expect Cranberry to look at voiding its opportunity to continue along their same pathway and their relationship with Princeton to go somewhere else. So at this point, that would not be something we would be targeting. Jamesburg is the same boat. They have a relationship they're currently sending. Now, if somebody reached out to us, I feel like an NFL, like an NFL GM. I'll listen to the offer and, you know, talk, but at this point we're not pursuing. I did joke with the other Brunswicks and said we could become the Brunswick School District, and we'd have New Brunswick, East Brunswick, South Brunswick, and Old Bridge wanted to jump in as West Brunswick. So that would be, you know, but that's not realistic. I'm obviously joking. We're a big district. The districts they're talking about are, I live a stone's throw away from a town called Roosevelt. Roosevelt has 70 students, and it's a school district. That's what they're talking about. Okay. Even Millstone, where I was former superintendent and where I live, they are a send-receive district. They're a K-8, and they send to another district. That could be a partnership they might at some point choose. We're already not in that boat, and we don't have a regionalization partner at this point.
Great, thank you.
That's it? Anyone else on the right? Oh, Mike? No. How about the left? No?
All right.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys. That was a very good presentation.
John,
It's always good to have negative tax ramifications to the
Yep.
public. And like you said, this is the third year we've been doing that. So it's an amazing thing where, because Saturday was the quarterly legislative committee meeting, which I'm a member of. Mike and Joyce joined as guests, and I asked the question of the school board's lobbyists about how can districts look to next year as far as the formula was concerned. And he said, what do you mean? It's the same percentages. It hasn't changed. I said, well, we have, because we were supposed to get hit. So we can't go by that those numbers. And right away, his famous line, since I've known him, is, I'll get back to you. So that should be interesting. They didn't realize that districts, and it's not just us, there were a lot of districts got more than what they were supposed to do. So the formula seemed to have changed, and it seems like school boards didn't know what I was talking about. So it should be interesting.
Just so everybody's aware, when the presentation died, we stayed live on Zoom. So everybody still
that's good.
Everybody still saw us, and everybody was still listening to us.
How many people are we up to, by the way?
We have, right now, 56 people.
Oh, okay. So the parents and the
They all went.
students, they left
They
when
left.
they
They went and did
gave them a
homework.
choice, right? Is that what it is?
Public comment.
Okay, moving along. We're gonna, can I get a motion to open to the public, please?
We don't need a motion, remember?
We don't need a motion?
No. Just
You
walk through
approved the agenda.
Yeah, that's force of habit from the planning board, sorry about that. Okay, moving along. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. Complete copies of the rules that govern this portion of the meeting you can obtain an advance copy by contacting the board office during regular business hours. We reserve the right to limit each speaker to no more than 3 minutes. It is our plan to listen to each member of the public. We will note all questions and comments made. Once all questions and comments from all members of the public are made, the Board of Education will respond. It is necessary to questions, if necessary, to questions or comments in the most timely and efficient manner available. Please consider not repeating comments and questions made by other members of the public. I ask that you state your name, place of residence, and group affiliation. Was there anyone that registered?
We had no registrations, but I have 2 people online
Okay.
ready to talk. First up, we have Jim. Jim, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Hi, my name is Jim. Hi, I'm the father of a current South Brunswick student. I've been viewing the social justice series for parents that the South Brunswick Board of Ed is putting on. While I believe it's pushing an extreme political ideology, it is directed at parents who are then capable of making their own decisions, forming their own opinions. Parents are then free to access the one-sided resources, books, and videos being pushed by the Board of Ed and can choose to have those conversations with their children at their home. That's not a problem. Throughout the last 2 weeks, however, I've emailed with the board members numerous times to ask if they intended to teach the topics of critical race theory, intersectionality, white privilege, the 1619 Project, and systemic racism inside the classroom to our children. I've not been given a clear answer. It is quite clear based on the social justice series that they will be pushing divisive and race-based learning to our children. During these emails with the board, I felt that they avoided the question by simply directing me to the NJSLS standards. I read the standards, and on the very first page under vision, it clearly states that they will provide, and I quote, an education in social studies fostering a population that discerns fact from falsehood and critically analyzes information for validity and relevance. Our district's responsibility is to instruct our children to discern fact from falsehood and not brainwash them with extreme ideology. This teaches them what they want to teach our children is not what makes us the same that matters, but instead only to focus on what divides us. Instead of a well-rounded education where all facts and views will be discussed, all evidence thus far suggests the district intends to push a one-sided and extremist view that will indoctrinate our children with resentment and distrust from racially divisive sources. If the board has decided to push such divisive ideology in our classrooms, I would like to know if they will allow parents to view the lessons that they will be teaching children regarding white privilege, intersectionality, critical race theory, the 1619 Project, and systemic racism. As a concerned parent, I'm asking the board a direct question that I'll put in writing again if need be. I'm asking you to conspicuously and publicly post and share all the full lessons, videos, and resources on the social studies curriculum regarding your agenda that includes, again, systemic racism, 1619 Project, white privilege, intersectionality, and critical race theory so that all the parents can view it. The least our district leaders can do is publicly let parents know what they will be indoctrinating students with and allow parents to opt out their children if they disagree. South Brunswick parents have a right to know what divisive materials and agendas are being pushed in the classroom, and I hope the board will be honest and forthcoming with parents in this matter. I encourage all parents who do not wish to see a one-sided agenda pushed on their children inside the classroom to contact the board and Mr. Fetter via email to make their voices heard. It should stay outside the classroom where it currently is and where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Lavin.
Okay. Up next, we have Akash.
Hello, this is Akash Kanan speaking, and my suggestion is for the South Brunswick School District to allow alumni of South Brunswick High School, at least 5 alumni, to volunteer at graduation, because if there are alumni that volunteer to speak or hand out diplomas to students at graduation, this will make South Brunswick an even better school district.
Akash, thank you
And
very
graduation won't be done well.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Is that it, Mr. Pulaski?
That's it, sir.
Okay. Close the public portion. Moving along to board committee reports. Is there anyone that has, Dr. Parker?
Yes. As chair of the negotiating committee, I just want to first of all, remind this board that we have 8 bargaining units. All the contracts are up this year, so we'll have to negotiate with all 8 units. Given all the uncertainty that we just went through with the budget, we felt prudent to look at one-year deals, partly to help us get through this and back to hopefully some normal. At the same time, we really wanted to thank the employees for all the work that they've done through this pandemic. And as such, I'm happy to announce, as I kind of shared content with you in the executive session, that we have a one-year deal approved with our largest unit, the teachers unit. It's a salary increase only, a bit of a generous one so that we can say thank you for what they've done. One other small no-cost change in how healthcare costs are calculated. So as such, since they've approved it, I'd like to put a motion on the floor to have this board approve this agreement. And then we can get going with the other 7 units. So I guess I need a second to that motion.
I second. Rogers?
And I assume this is a roll
Moved by
call.
Dr. Parker, second by Mrs. Rogers.
This will be a roll call vote?
Yes. Can I get a roll call, please? Mr. Pulaski. This is only on the motion.
Correct. It's a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement with the Teachers Association. Mr. Rajakrishna?
Yes.
Mr. Ray Keener?
Abstain.
Mrs. Joyce Mehta,
Yes.
Mr. Mike Mitchell,
I abstain.
Dr. Stephen Parker,
Yes?
Dr. Smita Raj,
Yes.
Mrs. Lisa Rogers,
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Scaletti, absent, Mr. Barry Nathanson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Dr. Parker, and thank you.
I think
ahead.
the public should be aware that we have several members here that are considered conflicted by law, and therefore they must abstain from it. So Mr. Keener and Mr. Mitchell are abstaining because the law requires them to abstain from it.
Thank you, Dr. Parker.
Thank you.
Moving along, can I get,
Any committee?
we're still going on board committee reports. Mrs. Rogers.
Yeah, so just a quick curriculum update. The committee met prior to the last meeting, and some of the items that we discussed, and they're located on the Board of Ed portal for the members, is we discussed the hybrid model, and that the district had met with the elementary team of teachers and administration to reflect on the progress of hybrid and hear any concerns that staff may have had. The second item that we discussed was the Career Academy and the progress, and this also relates to the strategic plan. Jen had shared that there's been a few meetings to discuss the design of the Career Academy progress, and hopefully we'll hear some more in the upcoming meetings here to you all. Also, one of the things that we did discuss was the learning loss plans. And Jen had again shared that it's been a focus since last spring, obviously with the pandemic and the kids being out for a year. And they're currently planning for the fall, trying to find ways to address the learning needs of all the students. So just wanted to give a quick update to this board. And again, you can find the meeting minutes on the portal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Mr. Keener.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson. Yeah, just to report that on March the 8th, the Budget Committee did meet from 6 to 7:30. The topics were what was presented this evening. It was a pretty lengthy meeting, and we did get a lot of things done. I want to thank both Scott and David for their abundance of information so that we could come together and make a decision on the budget that we presented this evening. In addition, I want to remind the public, as Mr. Federer said, we dodged a catastrophe this year in the S2 funding. We still need to be vigilant and keep our eye on it, and the public still needs to be in touch with their elected representatives to have something addressed and have the funding addressed, because it's out of control. So, thank you.
Mr. Nick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just, Lisa was actually being shy earlier when she mentioned her comment about legislatures and all of that. Lisa is one of the people in the state right now leading a charge on the topic of S2 funding, working with school boards members from all over the state. That she volunteered to do that as a member of one SOS, Save Our Schools, with a different SOS, which is Support Our Students, which is the S2 group that we are part of with about 100 other districts. So when you say, Mr. Keener, to keep up with the legislation, Lisa would be one of the people to help coordinate those efforts in the town. So thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, so the board knows, and the members of the public, what the effort that Lisa's doing with some of the other members of the SOS is speaking to PTO and PTAs throughout the state to flood what's going on in Trenton, so they can see that the formula is basically lopsided, like Mr. Keener said, where some districts are getting an enormous amount of increases, beyond what we lost, but there were a lot of other districts that lost a lot of money. Field Township Regional, Thomas River, Old Bridge. So, working on, or Mrs. Rogers and the rest of the SOS is working on behalf of every district that's impacted, so.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Mehta.
The policy committee met and reviewed the policies that you can find in the consent agenda. Each department impacted by any policy was also provided an opportunity to review and provide input. At this time, our committee is confident that these policies will ensure that South Brunswick Township schools meet all the legal requirements of 18A and 6A. At this time, we did pull policy 2431, athletic competition, which we will continue to discuss at the committee level and provide feedback to the board when appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mehta. I believe that's it. Moving along, can I get a motion for the consent agenda of March 11th, which is tonight? Moved by Dr. Parker. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Keener. Mr. Pulaski, roll call, please.
My glasses this time. Here we go. Mr. Raja Krishna.
Present.
No, is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
There we go. I think you did that last meeting as well. This one's a yes or no. Mr. Ray Keener.
Yes.
Mrs. Joyce Mehta.
Yes.
Mr. Mike Mitchell.
Yes.
Dr. Stephen Parker.
Yes.
Dr. Smita Raj.
Yes.
Mrs. Lisa Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Scaletti is absent. Mr. Barry Nathanson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Board comments or communications to my right. Anybody? Mrs. Rogers, go
Just
ahead.
thank you to David. I know what you're doing is not easy with that budget, and there's long hours, but please pass on thanks to your staff as well. It's a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to the right? Mr. Mitchell, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to give a shout out to the National Merit Scholars and the honorees as well as the parents. I'm so proud of each and every one. Also to our Middlesex County School Boards Association and MCASA Unsung Heroes, a huge congratulations. Congratulations also, and I know that it was already covered by Zoya, but I wanted to do a special shout out to our high school winter sports teams, particularly the boys and girls varsity bowling teams, who I promised to give a shout out to anyway. They had a fantastic season. I'm also a high school bowling coach, so I'm around a lot and I see what they do. We actually competed against them as well. So, you know, congratulations to all of them, to the coaches, Tara Brenniston and Kelly Fortune. Congratulations. And finally, I'd like to recognize Women's History Month by recognizing 2 women who've made a difference. Rutgers women's basketball head coach and Hall of Famer C. Vivian Stringer, who's a resident of South Brunswick, and also our current Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. To the left. Go ahead, Mr. King.
I just want to echo Mike's sentiments on our National Merit Scholars on a great achievement and wish them luck in the future. And I especially wanted to say thank you to Mr. Varela for putting together something to try to make it special in these difficult times. He did a great job. Unfortunately, we can't have him here like we've done in the past, but thank you, Mr. Varela, for all you did for that to make it special.
Thank you. Mrs. Mehta, you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yes. I too would like to say heartfelt congratulations to the Merit Scholars and to their parents and to all the educators that were nominated this evening. It really does take a village, and we're incredibly proud of every student. The South Brunswick Commission on Women are holding their annual Careers Fair on the 27th of March. We are holding it virtually this year. Registration will open this weekend, so please go to their website to register for the conference with a host of interesting panelists. We have 9 panelists, 9 workshops this year, so please go ahead and register to attend. Municipal Alliance held their regular meeting yesterday, they of course continue to support all alcohol and substance-related programs. They also support Project Graduation, who are organizing a clothing drive at Reichler Park. They're also doing a tricky tray at the end of the month and offering a large scholarship. Please go and look up their details about Project Graduation on their Facebook page. One last thing. The South Brunswick Board of Education is fully committed to the health and well-being of all our students. We have received feedback from the high school student community and from parents to consider later start times for our high schoolers. I'm honored to be entrusted with leading an ad hoc committee to further study the impact of parents to consider late start times for our high schoolers. And South Brunswick has always collaborated with our community to gain feedback, and we will reach out again on this topic. We will be putting together an ad hoc committee in the next few weeks, and we shall keep you updated as to the status. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mehta. Anyone else? Just a couple quick things from me. This Saturday, Project Graduation is having their annual clothing and shoe drive fundraiser, where they will, there's a list online, a pretty extensive list online, what you can drop off. So they're going to be at Reichler Park from 8 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So they're looking for the bags of the clothes, and they make some significant money. Project Graduation is an important partner with us for graduation. So if you do have, if you clean out your closets and you have bags laying around, please drop them off on Saturday. I want to just say something at the unfortunate year anniversary of COVID. So March 11th, 2020, and I've told this story before, I was sitting trying to get back from Israel, leaving early because everything started shutting down. Israel closed their borders and started cutting off trips and such, and we had to get out of there because when we go to Israel, we go through England, and England was closing down too. So we were able to get a flight out on the 11th to go to Heathrow and from Heathrow to home. And I'm sitting at Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, and I look at my phone, and it says Scott Fetter. And Scott didn't realize the 7-hour difference, so it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, my time. And Scott was telling me about he had to close schools down. And yes, we were one of the first to do it, or if not the first. And I have to, again, like I do often, thank Mr. Fetter, Ms. Desler, Mrs. White, and Mr. Pulowski, and the entire staff of South Brunswick for doing a heck of a job this year. It's just, it's to the public, there's a lot of things you don't see, and there's a lot of things that had to go in to continue the operation to make sure we could give you the education that you're almost used to. So again, I want to thank the senior staff and every staff member in South Brunswick for a interesting year, to say the least. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Keener, second by Mrs. Mehta. All in favor? Any opposed? Good night, South Brunswick. Please stay safe.